Press the button, Jack.
Which button?
The chair button.
The chair button? I pressed it. It's pressed.
All right, so we're live. This is real. This is the real deal.
It's the real deal. It's real.
All right. Welcome, Crowfallers. Welcome to another edition of World Building. We like to keep it much more lively than the designers. So we're going to get started. So today we're going to talk about the greyboxing of our whole new space for the Beachhead. We're replacing, is that cool? Sorry. We're replacing the old Beachhead with this whole new space. You're looking at a concept right now. It's on the screen. And we're really excited about this. This is going to be a space unlike anything we've created so far. And I'm going to walk you through the process of the early concepts, the shapes and ideas, the early greyboxing, and then kind of where we're at right now. And then we'll run through it, and I'll explain all the features of what this space is going to offer. But before I do that, I want to give a shout out to Rudy on the environment team. He's one of our new environment artists, fairly new, 2 or 3 months now. This is the farm, and I just wanted to quickly show this off. I'm not going to answer a whole lot of questions, but yes, there will be farming in the game. I think we've all known this. But Rudy kind of pumped this thing out, and I really love the way it came out. So it's going to give the farmers a chance to really kind of grow their crops and get a little cottage out there. And you'll be able to expand this a little bit. For example, you might be able to put up a like a little well, which is right here. Look how cute that looks. Perfect. He's working on a wall right now, so we'll have kind of like those old Scottish Highland walls that kind of separate the areas. Anyways, I just wanted to give a shout out. I love the way this is coming together. He's been a really good addition to the team. And I also wanted to show off what Aaron has been working on. He's been in Castle Land working on the expansion of like wall attachments and battlements and stuff. And he's been really doing a fantastic job on that. Unfortunately, I don't have anything to show right now. It's mostly done, but it's one of those things that you just have to put it all together to show off. We'll get you next time, but good job, Aaron. All right, so let's get into this. Let's just go right away. And so this is the brand new Stoneborn Beachhead, and it's broken up into 5 areas. And this is the concept that we ended off right now, but I'm going to take a few steps back and kind of explain a little bit more about the Stoneborn and what the idea came from. And I'm going to start pumping out some early concepts that Mr. Nicholas. He's one of our awesome, badass concept artists. So we all sat down at one point, Melissa, Todd, Dave, Nick and us, and we wanted to start making structures that were just completely different than any of like the human or really most of the other races. And we thought, well, what race would best represent these kind of scales and stuff? And we thought, well, the Stoneborn, they represent the ancient race that were kind of dedicated to the gods. So we said, all right, Stoneborn. And that's kind of where it first started. And we really wanted these structures to be massive, just huge, way bigger than any of the other like human stuff. And so I'm just going to thumb through some of these earlier shapes. And this is really what this is. This is a very rough concept, just kind of banging out like silhouettes and shapes and stuff. And I love them. I love all this kind of stuff because it really allows me as a kind of a modeler to explore and stuff. And when you're doing a concept like this, you don't necessarily go exactly the way it is. You know, you pick a few things from each concept that you like. And, you know, certain shapes like this center thing, I end up making something like that because I liked it. I just thought it looked cool. But you'll see in various stages, we start to kind of hone in on the shapes. And I'll get to that in just a second. So we liked some of these kind of things. You'll see this shape quite a bit. Some of this kind of structure we thought made really good silhouettes from the side and from the front. And we also started exploring like what kind of engravings would they have. You know, there's a little bit of that Celtic look and kind of fantasy look that we're trying to strive to kind of mix together. And let's see, there's some more shapes. Some of it sticks, some of it doesn't. Again, we really like some of these circle shapes, but we also wanted to incorporate some of the pyramid, but we didn't want to make actual pyramid structures to Egyptian, possibly. You know, it's been done quite a bit. So we tried to stay away from those kinds of things. So we started out with some of this kind of stuff and then kind of went away from it. I like this one too. This was kind of a cool structure. And even some of this other stuff out there, I went ahead and just kind of quickly modeled it out to see what that would look like out in the world. All right, I think that's it. All right, so then from that point, we started to hone in on actual shapes and structures. So I did a first pass on what that would look like. We liked a few different variations of the pillars. Here's where some of the walls that we liked, maybe some of the doorways or just something, some sort of interesting structure that you would go through. And then the shapes that represent inside the walls. And so this was more of a complete picture that we started to narrow down. And here's another good one that I like that explored the different shapes within inside the designs. I like this one a lot. We end up using this one. So I'll show you what that kind of looked like. This was the first kind of rough draft of what I modeled out. And you can start to see some of this stuff blending together. So you can kind of see this guy right here is this shape right here, kind of so on, and so on. And I made a bunch because, like always, you want to make enough to then start narrowing down what you really want to use. So this is all greyboxing, and for those that don't understand that reference, greyboxing is like a term that a lot of 3D artists use to roughly map out or kind of 3D sketch out a vision. So you usually start with, and you can do it in various couple ways. You can quickly greybox something out, and I'll show you what I'm talking about before concept, and then take that greybox, send it to concept. They can get those ideas and shapes and then kind of paint over it or just repaint it. Or you can get concept firsthand and then greybox that idea out. And then you start checking for size and scale and if it's going to work. So yeah, this is just some, interesting shapes. And, I think we're going to use a good bit of this, not all of it, of course. I like this guy because I envision you walking, and these are the size of a player, just to kind of give you a reference. So these scales are, when I say big, they're huge. And you really get that sense when you're running around, and I'll show you here in a little bit. So yeah, this is a kind of just an interesting space, maybe some sort of sacrificing pit, and that kind of cool stuff. This was that one kind of, I think it was this guy. I really like this structure. It was almost like a giant pavilion. Pavilion, is that how you say it? Pavilion? It just looked interesting, looked cool. Does it really have to mean anything? Not necessarily. So from here, I took these ideas and created, this was our first idea of a rough kind of just area of what this would look like. And you got to understand, we envision this Stoneborn stuff being thousands of years old, maybe tens of thousands of years old. So they're old structures. You're rarely going to see any of it kind of in pristine condition. They're most all going to be in some sort of rough state. And this was just to give Todd an idea of what we might have been thinking about. So you can imagine walking up randomly, just in the world through this, and you see what looked like the remnants of a just a Stoneborn. Oh, T-Dog's here. I've just got started, so I'm going to get into this, but Todd's going to come in and eventually take some questions. You want to say hi to the crew? Yeah.
No, I'll just pop in and say hello. But you can't see yourself this time. Oh, you can see yourself over there.
Over there.
Good.
Yeah.
She's showing the new
yeah, just the new Stoneborn greybox stuff, and I was showing him how this was our first kind of real early greybox stuff of what we were showing you how this space might work in just randomly out in the world.
Yeah. Have you shown any of the concepts for these pieces as well?
Yeah, just went through all that. And so now we're showing off some actual modeling.
All right. Well, I'll come back then. I've seen all this. So I'll come back in a little while.
All right. I know they're going to have a ton of questions, so.
Cool. All right. See y'all in a bit.
T-Dog, everybody.
Bye, Todd.
So yeah, where was I? I completely lost my train of thought. Yeah.
He would never do that to you.
No, he would never do that to me. But yeah, so basically, there's a combination of how we want to use the Stoneborn. And we've come to this kind of thinking that there's going to be stuff just randomly out in the world that looks like could have been either some sort of, structure. Think like an abbey. You know how like in England, you go to England, there's old castles that have been ruined or abbeys. So we want that stuff where they're not full structures. There's destruction everywhere. There's moss and overgrowth and all that kind of stuff. And it's just to create very interesting points in the world. And it also shows you that the Stoneborn, they were everywhere. And that was kind of the thinking behind that. So you'll see some things out in the world that they don't necessarily have to mean anything at all. They're just an interesting place. And we may have cool stuff in there, and most likely we will. We'll probably have some chests or mobs that you gotta have to kill and whatnot. But it's just kind of more of an interesting game space. We're just trying to really find and explore ways to make the game more interesting. So that was the initial go at that. And then from there, we were like, you know what? It would be really cool if we did this for the Beachhead. Why not have the idea that the humans and all the other races have come in and when we refer to the Beachhead, that's another thing that's an internal use that's kind of stuck. Think of like Normandy in World War II. They established the Beachhead when they landed and, to fight the Germans. So that's kind of what they're doing is these races have come in, your faction, whatever faction you decide to play for a campaign, and you've established this temporary, it's a temporary beachhead location to kind of put all your supplies in, and then you go forth with trying to take over the map. So that's kind of the thinking and the idea behind that. So let's get going on some of the other stuff. So this is where we started going from here, and this is I'll start thumbing through some of the concepts so that you can kind of get a better idea. First off, I guess I'll explain these locations. I probably should do that first. And let me load up. All right, so this is it right now. Now, you've noticed this is in pristine condition, and everything that you're seeing in this concept is all destroyed. This is probably what it's going to look closer to, where it's all destroyed. But I had to like mentally think about this, like just going in and trying to think about how the structures would look beforehand would have been hard to do. So I decided to say, screw it. I'm just going to build it out, what we think it might look like, and then I can easily destroy this, afterwards. So that's kind of why you're looking at two different stages of this. But you basically have your area that you come into. So like right now, when you come into a campaign, you come to that beachhead we have now, you start at that temple up on the hill. This area right here is essentially that temple now. So you come in, you zone in, and the first thing you're going to see is across the pavilion, I guess the what do you call that? Like a form or a like when there's a
oh god, I know exactly.
You know exactly what I'm talking about, right?
If you hadn't asked me, I would have been able to tell you what it was. Rotunda.
Yeah, that is something along those lines. This is the room most likely you're going to be spending a lot of time in. And I'll break down the reasons why. But you essentially have one of the main chambers, which is right here. We'll have what we're going to use this room as kind of the market area. And there's a bank as well. There's this cathedral coliseum type area is going to be kind of smashed, sunken in, and in shambles. And this is where some pack pigs are going to go for some early quests. And then you'll have the ruin gates and the crypt down in here. I'll get into much more detail on all this. So just another, again, a backstory of why we decided to make this space was we really wanted to figure out the play loop, the player loop for coming in as new players, but just as important as returning players. How do we want that to happen? So if you're a new player, you really have no context for what any of this is, but we need to make sure that we kind of breadcrumb you in a way that you can easily learn the game, and with some like light NPC missions, teach you combat, teach you all the things you need to know before we drop you into the, the campaign. So we really had to design this out so that it fit that narrative. But we also really wanted to make sure that the returning player doesn't get bogged down with this huge playscape that's not really necessary. And so if you're a returning player, you'll be able to see exactly straight away where you go. And if you want to go right into the campaign, you can get right to the campaign, or you can go right to some crafting and just some sell some stuff in the marketplace. And then the sacrificing, which is in the center area, you can get all that done and then just get the hell out. And that was kind of very important. We wanted to make sure that you can get in and out as a returning player. And by the way, this most likely won't be changing in terms of things will change, of course. This is all greyboxing, but it won't be God, I can't think of the goddamn word. What's the procedurally generated? It won't be man, I am slow today. I've only had one cup of coffee, so whereas like the world right now, we're procedurally generating all those parcels around. We won't be procedurally generating the beachheads. So, and we talked back and forth, long and hard. Do we need to do that? Does it matter if this market is here in one beachhead, and then the next time you come in, the beachhead or the market's over here? We just realized that that's not really conducive to the returning player. Like, they really don't care as much. So this area per faction will never change. I say never. It won't likely change once we nail down what we need in that area, if that makes any sense.
Todd said you're wrong about something. I don't know specifically what it was.
Well, he's thinking, all right, so there will be some automative, or I guess procedurally generated areas outside this. But it most likely, according to the conversations we've had, the differences will be, order will have a different version. It will look slightly different. Chaos will have a different version, of course, it will look different. But those will most likely be locked in for each one, if that makes any sense. I'm struggling here. I can already tell. Anyways, how about I just get into the damn game and we take a look at it there. And Todd can come in and basically say everything I said was false. Beachhead. All right. While I'll wait for this, I'll show you some of the other cool concepts that Nick did. This is that center area, the what I would refer to as the more important area, one of the more important areas of this beachhead. And there's the sacrificing pit here. We'll have I think it's like 13 god statues or something to that. Each faction will have its own set of statues. And they'll go kind of right here in each one of these little quadrants. And is that up yet? Oh. All right. So now what I've done here is I've taken what you've seen in that other program, Maya, and we brought it into Unity. And now we've truly checked for the size, space, scale. So we've run around it. And we're starting to form that picture to get a good idea of how to use these spaces. And I went ahead and just threw in some, and you can kind of see it. I threw in some destructed walls just to kind of get an idea. It's all stand-in right now, and none of that's final. But it's not going to look like this when you come in. It's going to look more like that. Like I said, walls will be destroyed. Vegetation will be all over the place. We really want to get that feeling of this has been here for thousands of years. And I really like how Nick was kind of playing around with these ideas. So just to kind of give you guys a heads up why you're seeing some of that stuff around. I'll just fly through this real quick, and then we'll run through it. These are just a stand-in market. We're going to end up doing some really cool things like this with tents and overhangs and carpets. So we really want it to feel like it's not necessarily something that's going to stay there. It feels like they just quickly came here, started putting stuff down, and it's a makeshift market. So there's supplies everywhere. There's all kinds of stuff that you would imagine if you were making a temporary market. And then these are some other concepts that Nick did for like some of the statues and the spaces that we want to use. I really love this idea of having people that might have, you know, there's flowers and, you know, little trinkets that they might have, you know, laid there for the gods because they've prayed to them. And so there's going to be all kinds of stuff that we're going to lay near the statues. So yeah, this is the market area. And down over here will be the bank. And all this is stand-in in terms of like the statues. So we took like the Stoneborn T-pose, and I just, you know, this is a perfect example of like, I would say a gray box 2.0. I've got some decent modeling going on with the space that I'm using. So it's not a complete gray box, but I've got a lot of stand-in stuff to represent where things might go. This is all part of the creative process of getting to a final product. In fact, I can show you what the original gray box looked like. Does anyone have any questions while I'm doing some of this? I'm sure they do.
Someone asked what the program was that you had the models up in earlier.
Oh, that's Maya. This is my 2018.
Mostly they were asking about getting a sense of scale, so running through.
Yeah, I know. I realize it's really hard to get a real true sense of scale, but I figured by just doing this way, showing them where it came from, it might really give them a better context. So really what I did is I just threw in some of those earlier shapes that I made and just quickly made some silhouettes and some high areas and some low areas. And this was the initial idea for the design. And it's really rough. I mean, this is about as gray box as it gets. This was going to be like we thought about putting the bank inside of a building or outside of a building. So you can imagine they would have set things up outside here. And then for no reason at all, Nick did a really cool drawing in here. And I was like, that looks really badass. Why don't we put the bank under the ground? And that's kind of where that came from. So we started exploring those ideas. But this was the original. And then from here, I took a bunch of screenshots, sent it off to Nick. And from there, he started kind of playing around and doing what he does, which is awesome concepting. And it just kind of morphed from there. So this is the old. And then this is the new. And then let's just go ahead and go down there and run around. I'm sure that's what they all want. Alrighty. Turn off lighting. And this will take a second. You always know that I'm about to play or run around something when my screen goes blue. That's my way of saying I'm in play mode. Unity has an interesting feature where you can change the color of your play mode, but by default, it doesn't change your screen at all. So I've been in play mode, and when I first started using Unity and made a bunch of changes, realized I was in play mode, get out of play mode, all your changes, they go away. So I learned very, very quickly. So our engineers have given us a really awesome tool which allows us, the environment team, to kind of get a character scale, basically our character interface, and use it in any scene that we want. It's actually not an easy thing to do because it's got to simulate the server and the client and all that. And so this allows us to pick any character and then, great. I got to redo this. Of course I say it works and then it doesn't work. It normally works. And but it really gives us an awesome way to actually get characters in there to get a true sense of the size and the scale. Did Todd ever say what I was wrong about?
That there would be some procedurally generated.
Yes. All right. So let me clarify that. The procedural generation stuff will be probably on the outside, and there's a possibility that props and stuff might be procedurally generated. But again, I think the idea, and I guess I'll have to check with you, Todd, but from last we all talked about was that the rooms themselves per faction weren't really going to change. So that way, if you were going into order again, let's say you started out in order, that's not going to change. You'll know where to go every time. And was kind of by design. Did he answer that?
Not yet.
Surprised he hasn't come through the window. I have a tendency to say things that I probably shouldn't say about the game. Like the fact that we're adding spaceships in next milestone. That's not true.
Now Todd really is going to come into the window.
All right, I don't know what is going on, but we have seemed to be getting some errors here. Oh boy. All right, well, let me think about how I can get around this. In the meantime, ask questions. You guys can try to...
Sure.
If you want to try to get something out of me, now's the time to do it.
Before Todd gets across the hall.
Before Todd, yeah, he's running probably right now.
They're mostly asking him questions in chat, honestly.
He doesn't even have to come here. He can just stay in chat. Oh boy. Dead air. Well, what are some of the questions people are asking him?
Can we expect cool stuff like this outside of the beachhead?
Yes. And that is the reason why I was saying that you might run into some other areas that look similar to the beachhead. Not near as big, but there will be some structures just out there in the world.
Did you use anything as reference for building this besides just strictly the concept?
Yeah, I poked around. Obviously, some of the old Roman buildings, Colosseum type of thing. Some Greek structures, which is very close to the Roman structures. Really, actually, how certain walls were. People used walls, like castle walls, kind of how they melded those together. And then a lot of it just playing around with shapes. Well, damn it, did not work. Son of a bee. I don't know. Well, you know what I can try? I can fly around, I guess. It's not the same, but at least we could see some of the space. God, it was just working too.
Do you manually destroy those structures, or does Unity have a streamlined way of doing that? No,
unfortunately, we have to. Yeah, this destruction that I'm referring to right here is separate from like our wall destruction. These beachheads, of course, won't be destructible. You're not going to come in and siege the beachheads. They're kind of like our safe zone, safe space. But we have to do it ourselves, and which is fine. We can. I'm going to try one more thing. See if I can just run it through the client. Hello, Rena.
Hi.
Do you want to come in and?
I just want to come in and give you good vibes because there seems to be some.
I know. Technical difficulties here. I don't know why.
I don't know.
Such is life. Such is doing it live.
I know, right? We'll do it live. All right. Need like a onboard prog to sit here with me. This may or may not work. Do you want to come and sit down?
Oh no. I have
sure,
nothing to offer.
Let the people see.
I have nothing to offer at this time.
All right, so this is just not going to work, I think.
We've got the same setup going as before.
Yeah, I don't know if it's...
Settings are the same.
I don't think it's a stream problem. I think it's a...
I think it's a me problem.
It's a John problem.
I'm trying to think what else I can do here. I can maybe try to bring in another one. Let me test the connect. Well, if I do the connection here, it won't really matter, right?
No. You can adjust that.
Could you do me one favor?
Sure.
Could you log me out on my computer at my desk? I don't know if that's causing that. Like if it's thinks I'm in two places at once. Well, hopefully Todd is actually in there answering a ton of questions.
He is.
Because I am failing here, big time. While she's doing that, I'll go ahead and try to do one other thing real quick that we can at least just fly through in game mode. What are some of the other questions? I hate dead air.
Well, they're mostly asking about Sentinels.
Oh yeah, the Sentinels. I guess I could kind of show off the idea of that. That's still fairly new. The location where they're going to go, what they're going to offer. Is that turned off?
Yep.
All right, maybe that will work. So we're going to turn off my computer. Maybe it's because I'm logged in at a couple places. Well, now I'm falling through the screen. I checked this all before we started. All right, let's try the walking through with no character first, and then I'll try one more time with the character itself. All right. Why are you coming in? This is actually where we need Todd. Tell him to come over here. Makes it more interesting. All right. Well, at least we can now see it. Fortunately, you won't get any real player reference. I guess I can. I'll turn on some players that I have in here, so you will walk by them. And then let's pump me down to like 2 meters. Yeah. So this is where you'll basically start. And again, this is like the temple that we are now. And we really want that first initial view of this space to be kind of like a wow moment. You know, bam, here's the Stoneborn stuff. We'll probably cage you in this area. We did talk about possibly having some spaces where you can get out of, because we will have walls that have been busted down to allow you to go outside of this thing. But this is the initial area we want you to kind of feed you into this room. Oh, I jumped really high. And then here's kind of the statues. Right now I just have the two, the champion and then, or the hero statue and, what's her name? Yaga. So Frank actually is working on that statue right now. He's one of our character artists and it looks really badass. This is the low poly version, so it's really cool. Actually, that's probably the high poly version. But yeah, so here's what we're envisioning. You know, when you're running around this space, there's going to be, you know, possibly hundreds of people running around, or at least dozens and dozens. And in this area right here, was that Todd? Did you walk in?
I think so. Oh, there he is.
Oh, there he is. We'll do this together. We'll have Todd come in here together. Todd, do you want to run through this with me?
Hello. Oh, you got it mostly working.
Well, I don't have a way to put a character in right now. So I thought it'd be fun to kind of run around and show them what we're going to use this space for.
Yeah, and remember that none of this is textured. This is with no textures at all. So Hunger Dome people will recognize this as looking a lot like Gray Box World. Except for the plants and stuff that are sticking through that we already had done. All the rest of it is new. So, they wanted to see the Yaga statue.
Yeah, it is really awesome. Frank's got a new updated version that's actually textured. I don't have it in this scene, and it looks crazy good.
Cool.
So that's going to be a really fun statue.
And do you have the Sentinels as well?
Well, I don't have the Sentinels in here, but I have the one that we talked about.
Do you have just the concept?
The concept. I don't. If
I can get it and send it over to you.
Yeah, get Nick to send it over. I can tell Nick. Yeah, tell Nick. But if you want to explain the idea of what these Sentinels are, you can.
Well, let's get a picture first.
Here, I'll pull it up and put it on the screen over here.
Yeah, that'd be great. It's actually going to become nighttime.
All right, so the idea is that these temples are basically the holy temples of Gaia, right? So this is where the Stoneborn would come. Effectively, you can think of them like giant cathedrals to the gods in general, but since they're very specifically towards Gaia, I liked the idea of these temples kind of being the most important place, the most holy place to the Stoneborn. So at the end of a world, when a world is coming to completion, the idea is that the Sentinels are effectively their four kind of oldest statesmen who are elevated to a position of such honor and authority that their job is to stand in this temple and protect it until the world is destroyed. So it's the last place that before the hunger takes a world out. It's kind of the last holdout place, and that being selected for one of these positions means that they're going to stand their ground until the moment that this world is destroyed, to basically witness the destruction of the world. So that's why I liked the idea of the Sentinels. So if you see each of the temples in the middle, and that it's a transept, by the way. That's what the word you're looking for. So the transept in the center, it's kind of like the where the altar is in a cathedral, right? So in the middle there is the sacrifice brazier that players can go and use to basically chip in items to the gods to gain experience and favor. So around the four statues, I think you mentioned, will be different depending on whether you are in an order or a balance or a chaos temple. And then for other worlds that are not faction-based, we'll probably continue to theme them like that because it makes sense logically that you would have a temple dedicated to the gods based on those factions. And then the challenge is I want the gods to have a more active role in the universe. Like I want the gods actually competing. I want the gods basically giving you tasks. And these are PvP-centric tasks that affect the overall strategy game. For example, if Malachi simply decides it is time for somebody to go take this fort, he can generate that as a task for everybody in this faction. And doing that task within some time frame can earn you a relic or earn you some benefit that lasts some period of time, earn you a faction buff or something like that. So the challenge was I needed some mechanism for the players to be able to get that information from the gods. And so the Sentinels gave me that, effectively giving me a set of high priests that I could put one at the base of each of those statues, gave me a mechanic where players could now actually go and have a mouthpiece to the gods. So the idea that the reason you can see on these concepts here, the idea is that these guys have basically taken a spot and been told, you're going to stand here until the end of time. They've been standing there so long that they've grown into the space. Literally, the roots that make up their internals have kind of crawled out and dug into the ground. And because they're sapping up the last of the strength of Gaia, it kind of supersizes them. It makes them much bigger than a normal Stoneborn. And actually, I was going to theme them as well for the different seasons. So you've got a spring, a summer, a fall, and a winter. variant, and each of them has kind of a different task. So one of them is about creation, which is for spring, and one of them is about harvesting, which is for fall. The PvP one, do you have that one, Jack? Can you show that one? Because that one has, he just did another rev of that last night, and it came through on my phone. I was like, holy shit, that guy looks cool.
Yeah, let me pull that one up too.
All right, I'm updating Unity. Hopefully we can get a way to run around.
So a lot of the stuff that you guys will see that comes into the game, you probably have noticed this now, having watched how we work for a couple of years now, is I'm laying groundwork and kind of staking out area for what I want to do in the future. So, will we have the interfacing with the God stuff on at launch? Probably not. But if I plan for it now and I know where we want to go, then I'm basically making it easy on us later. And in the meantime, it's still very cool. So I think it fits really well, and it helps also flesh out the narrative, so we're building a stronger base to grow from.
1 second.
That's all right. This is taking a sec to load up, so you can keep that on the screen for a bit.
So you can see that each of the different sentinels kind of has a different thing, right? The spring one is actually, he has new life blooming around him. The combat, the kind of warden of winter right there is basically been standing in the same spot with the sword, just waiting for the end times. We don't have one showing it, but one with the forge. I'm not sure if that was supposed to be fall. That was an earlier concept for fall, but one of them we thought could be praying. We talked about one of them serving penance, like being a light bearer, where he's basically permanently standing with a pole across his back and 2 torches hanging. So we're working through all the details of these guys now. It's always kind of a negotiation between what do we need from a design standpoint and how do we want the flow to work through this area. What do we think will look cool conceptually, and then what can John actually make work in the engine, right? So anyway, that's the Sentinels. They're coming along pretty well. I think it's a really cool concept.
All right, it looks like we're getting Unity updated.
So part of the goal with the Beachhead, John didn't really talk about it, was we wanted to go through the process of kind of condensing this whole thing down so that, because you've got kind of 2 different types of players, right, that end up using this Beachhead. You've got new players who have just come in, and they don't know. No, you didn't. I was watching. You didn't really cover it.
All right. Well, we'll look at the Todd version, which will probably be better anyways.
So, okay. So the first thing is for new players who come in. We wanted to make it very obvious. And so Blair uses the term weenies, which I think is something he picked up as Disney. But it's basically things that stick up above the rest of the terrain to draw your eye and say, hey, there's something interesting. Come over here. No jokes, Jack.
I hate it
You're
so much.
Inappropriate.
I know.
So you notice when you first come in, like John made it a point that there's nothing blocking your vision looking straight across from the temple. You see the rune gates on the other side. So if you're actually a returning player and all you want to do is immediately run out and get into trouble, you have a straight shot. You can cut right across that courtyard and you can get to the other side. You can hit a rune gate and you can be out in the world. And you could see that if it wasn't for the connection lost. Oh, wait. We can at least do this. Did that work?
I don't think so.
Oh, I was trying to kill the interface.
Yeah.
So you can see, and so the rune gates are right there. If you run into that central area, you'll see the brazier because you can't miss it. And then to the right and to the left, did it work?
No,
oh, for a second. For
did.
a second, you can see it.
I'll see if I can't just.
And then if you turn to the right and the left, you've got those big open archways that lead into different functional areas. So it was, vendors and banking and some newbie monsters that you can go fight for the players who have just come in and don't know what they're doing. So the goal was to make everything very centralized. For players who are returning, and very, very obvious for players who are coming in for the first time.
Yes. So I did a condensed version of that. That is a much better version.
Thank you, John.
Yeah. I concede. All right. Well, unfortunately, I apologize. I swear I had this working before we started, but I guess we'll go back to where we can at least kind of fly around and we can show the space off.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate that we can't.
So then around this area, so you've got a central one of these in every beachhead. And the goal was that if I spawn in, I can immediately get where I want to go. If I want to wander around outside of it, we are going to do some procedural generation there. won't be a lot. It'll kind of just be a newbie area. So these are basically, for Shadowbane people, you probably will recognize this has kind of become Newbie Island, effectively. Yeah. It's a place for me to jump into the game where I'm stunted on what I can do there, but at least gives me enough that I can kind of figure out how this game works before I get dumped into the deep end of the pool with all the sharks. So great analogy, right?
I love it.
Sharks in a pool.
Yeah. So this is the sacrificing
area.
Yep,
so this would be the sacrificial brazier in the middle.
And this is where we're talking about possibly putting the sentinels in front of these statues.
Yep. And we're still working out the details there. Like you'll notice the corners here are squared off. They're basically triangles that point to the middle. So a version that John did yesterday quartered those off to make it flat. And it looked a lot better. And it also helped with the flow. Because if I'm just trying to run catty corner from one area to the left or to the right, you know,
it'll get very
it just
busy.
Makes it a little easier for me. So we spent a lot of time as we're doing this going through on flow. Like the first version of this that John did, it looked really cool, but this platform that was in the middle was raised so high that I couldn't see beyond it to the area past. And so what that meant was, you know, it was cool looking, but it wasn't as functional. So I had them kind of lower that whole platform so that now when you come in, you have a straight shot. You can see across the area.
Yeah, what he was talking about is before, and I'll just kind of, I'll go down further than I would. It was barely you could see the top, I think it was, like something like that. And by making just that slight adjustment, Todd suggested just kind of bringing it down. And
see, now you can see all the way through to the other side.
You can see kind of where everyone will be running around.
Kind of opens the whole area up. Yeah. That's also a benefit that we get out of making the world in a destroyed state as opposed to a pristine temple, is it means that we can even open it up more because chunks of literally this archway here that you see in front, because the archway has collapsed, we were able to open it up and let you see through to see what the interesting stuff on the other side.
Yeah, and we'll have areas where, you know, you'll be able to go out and in.
Yeah, and I want to make sure that we always do a little bit of mountains on the Beachhead world as well, because the mountains then will be, to use Blair's term, be a weenie, they'll be an indicator to you that there exists something beyond this temple, so that if you want to go out and explore and scavenge and things like that, you certainly are invited to. And you know it's there. I don't want anybody to just miss that and go, oh, I thought I was stuck inside this little room.
So I think we have, for some reason.
My guess is that returning players, though, will never leave this area other than to go to the mainland, because there's just really no room. There's no reason. There's no reason to run outside the walls. So it really is kind of giving some newbie area, like Shadowbane did, for new players to come in, that they can kind of get their feet under them before they run off.
There's my little Scrooge McDuck vault.
That's very nice.
That you won't be able to get to, though. There's going to be a lot of gold down there.
I don't know why all of your guys are... Oh, you got the beards back. I was going to say your guys, half of them are missing beards. I'm not sure why, but...
This is a good example of how we're also kind of exploring the space. So this is going to be kind of what we're going to refer to as the bank area. And
the vault.
If it's too big, what we can always do is, like, what I've done is I've just crammed in some, you know, stand-in like destruction, and we can half the size of that room.
Yeah, we can. You know, that's the nice thing about rubble, is it makes it much easier for you to condense or expand space. I think your time of day just changed.
It did. So I was going to show them, like, so this is where, I guess this would be the ruin gate, where you would leave, and down here would be the crypt.
Yeah, the crypt.
So this is where you could change characters.
Yeah, moving the crypt to be more central as well.
Yeah.
One person, I think it was Blazin, actually asked about the training dummies. They're not planned in here right now, so the options would be, that's a good catch, the options would be either to put them in the same area that the pigs are in, or just to make it, just have a ruins outside. So I expect outside, the procedural area we'll do outside, we'll have some base village stuff. So we can train you how to scavenge as well as training you how to fight and things like that. And it would be very easy to shuffle a card into that deck that says, hey, give us a training dummy. The only downside there is it wouldn't be necessary. You wouldn't know for sure that it came up right here. It could be anywhere kind of on that world.
We definitely talked about putting, like, the training area in one of these quadrants. Randomizing it.
Yep.
And the last area would be, you know, the pig area. And again, this thing's going to be massively destroyed and smashed into the ground. So it'll be kind of a fun space, I think. For
Yeah,
them,
should be.
for at least for new players.
So I think this will be cool. I mean, the original Beachhead that we created, we didn't spend a lot of time thinking about flow. I think I went to John and just said like, "Hey, they need a starting area. Give me a city."
Yeah.
I think you might have even originally used like a village parcel or something.
I think I did.
So that said, we'll probably get use out of it. I'll probably take that parcel and repurpose it as like a zombie-filled village adventuring area or something like that, because we must use every part of the buffalo.
Everything.
That's we hate wasted work. We try and reuse everything as much as possible. So
yeah. I guess any other questions that people might have for
I
Todd?
don't know. So do you want to jump into some questions, Mr. Jack, if that is your real name?
Probably.
First of all,
How much time do we have?
10 minutes.
Jeez.
Okay, let's do a
Hour
couple
went
questions.
by like that.
Are these going to be like on their own islands the way they are in 5.7?
Yes, they will be all separated off onto their own islands. And that's better for performance anyway, because a lot of the players who are just coming in and learning the game, you'll clear them off from the PvP areas, which is nice.
I'm going to try one more time.
They were very excited to see water.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, yeah, I like...
Well, everybody knows I love water in
So
games.
much.
It's like my favorite thing. So yes, we know it's a thing. We'll get to it. It's just it's not high on my priority list, so it always bounces down. Other things that are more important come in, and I sidetrack people and say, well, forget the water. We'll get back to it.
I kind of like what we were talking about. We don't want to half-ass the water, so we want to make sure we got a good water, that the shader's good, that it's performing.
Yeah, it needs to be great, but
it
I
needs
also
to run really well.
I don't want to do swimming down
Yeah.
into it. I just think that's lame.
Yeah.
So I've done it before. I don't want to do it again. So what else you got, Jack?
There are not a whole lot of questions. since
Wow.
I popped in. I know.
Yeah, they got Todd
Here
here,
we go.
unfiltered.
Let's see. Are you guys planning on implementing tasks or quests? Something to do outside of harvesting?
We'll need, we won't do traditional WoW style quests. I do want to have some way of doing God-given tasks through those sentinels eventually, but they're not traditional MMO tasks. Like I don't expect us to go talk to this NPC and then he says go kill 8 wolves and then I bring back an amulet to somebody. We're not going to do that kind of stuff. It'd be more like Malachi demands that you collect this relic that just spawned in the world. And at the same time, we tell the other 2 factions that it happened as well. And so now what we're using it as a way to kind of stir up PvP conflict. Go take this base, go find this relic, go sacrifice this thing at this location. So it's still directed gameplay. And I like that. It gives people an answer to, I want more answers of what do I do next when I log in. I kind of want people to have enough what do I do next that there's never a question. It's like I'm choosing between things.
Yeah.
Right now, half the time in the game, I'm like, what do I do next? And the answer is I don't know. And that's not what we want. So it's a moment-to-moment gameplay loop issue that we're dealing with. And I'm kind of attacking it, as I do, you guys will probably notice, from a lot of angles. The Sentinels is another one of those angles, but that said, it is an entire system. So I'm laying the groundwork for it now. We'll see when it hits. It may be something that's part of our first big post-launch update.
Can you talk about RuneGate networks? Are some of the islands hubs while others are dead ends? Do RuneGates connect to multiple other gates?
Yeah, so yes, give me each of those in order, Jack. You hit me with too much stuff. So yes, I can talk about them. That's
Okay.
number 1 question.
Good. Glad we got that out of the way.
Okay, number 2 question. Do they connect to each other? Yes, they do. And those connections are actually going to be shown on another map that we don't have yet, which is a cluster map, because otherwise it would be impossible for players to understand where they were going. So that's something that's not in 5.7 and doesn't really need to be, because 5.7 is one mainland island with 3 offshoots, 1 for each beachhead. 5.8 is the first time we'll go to a truly multi-world cluster, and at that point we'll need a cluster map. So the individual linkages between those worlds will likely end up being one rune gate goes to multiple different worlds. That's not the way it is right now. Right now, one rune gate, for example, the one in the beachhead, may go to multiple different locations, but those locations are different parcels on the same destination world. My guess is that we're going to want to change that to where one individual rune gate temple will lead to multiple different worlds. And the reason is I've been looking at the map for 5.8, and I am nervous that if we don't do that, you're just going to have temples all over the place because some of them have as many as 6 different connectors to different worlds. And so I could accomplish the same thing with 1 rune gate or with 2 rune gates if I allowed 1 temple to go to multiple destinations. So that's where I'm leaning right now. I don't know. We'll wire it up and then we'll see. What else? Was there something else in there I missed?
No, you knocked that one out of the park.
All right.
Can you talk a little bit about the market area in the Beachhead?
The market area in the Beachhead, yeah. So that's basically just a starting area. Is I wanted to juice the newbie experience to get people kind of kicked off onto the game loop. Right now, the game loop is too heavily dependent on harvesting. I'm sure that comes as a giant shock to a lot of you, and you'll be tons of disagreement.
Not my harvesting, no.
So yeah, so what I wanted to do was give some alternate mechanisms for people to be able to kind of jumpstart that experience. So they'll provide, first of all, it's a cash-in spot. It'll be a cash-in spot where you can trade some stuff in for gold at a lossy rate. It'll also allow you to get some basic resources, so you don't have to go out and punch trees all day to get your cobblestone and your slag. And then lastly, it's kind of a bridge into the next phase, which is intermediates and crafting stations and advancement. So I'm trying to kind of breadcrumb people through that process. That said, I do have some larger plans for getting player-owned and player-managed vendors to work in the campaigns. That is not here. So that is actually going to have to be out in the world. But that is the subject of a future update. I'll give my teaser, which at this point should be fairly obvious, which is when in doubt, when you see me struggling with something that I don't like in our design, one of my most common cards that I play is I go back and look at Shadowbane. So I'll just kind of leave it at that. Whenever I am unhappy with what we took a lot of design risks, sometimes they don't play out. And whenever I'm not happy with one, I go back and look at Shadowbane and say, well, what did we do there and how did it work? So I do have some plans for that, but we'll make a future update out of that.
Very cool.
Based on how rune gates work and can lead to multiple destinations, how are you supposed to keep your army together to travel to an opponent's city to destroy it? Well,
right now, you can't, right? So we got grouping in to rune gates, and that was actually something that we didn't think we'd even get into 5.7 at all, was getting your group to not be disbanded when you gated. I know that sounds trivial and like, well, of course it should work that way. And of course it should, but that doesn't mean it will automatically, right? You create zoning and that lets players go across, but they're moving to a different world and that world has no idea of this concept of a group that you made on the previous world. So Steven actually kind of busted ass and just got grouping working, which is really cool. Now the next problem is that when I go through with my group, it's scattering us on the destination parcel. It's actually putting us at different locations. We did that on purpose. Ironically, the goal of scattering you was to hopefully give you a better shot of living when you arrive on the destination side. Yeah. But it hasn't really worked out that way. It's too easy to ambush. So as a cover for right now for 5.7, we're going to turn the death fog back on in that parcel to give people a chance to arrive somewhere, because that's really not the goal. The goal isn't, I want people fighting on departures, not on arrivals. Because on departure, both parties are loaded into the game and ready for a fight. On arrival, one group is not even loaded in the game yet, and that's just bullshit. So we're going to fix that. Longer term, we need to keep those groups in order, and I'll have to come up with some other solutions. And that'll probably be a couple of different vectors we hit it from. One is maintaining the groups. The other is that invulnerability timer. We could make that last a little longer. We could also do a handshake that you don't appear until all of the members of your party have appeared. So in 5.8, I'll do another revisit on that to try and strengthen it. For 5.7, we'll do the death fog, and that'll cover us for now.
Yeah, which is a good idea.
So there you go, Jack.
That's all I got.
All right.
You guys got 1 minute, so.
Perfect.
All right.
Well, thank you for saving me. I was drowning.
Shirley.
It's all right.
That's,
you want to try and run it again? You've tried like 50 times. It's just not going to work.
You know what? Maybe. What if it works right as the minute is done? And then we're going to cut it anyway.
We'll cut it. Yeah, I'm going to turn everything off. Like, as soon as you load in, we're done. We're out.
So maybe we should time it so we'll...
Yeah, I don't know why that's odd that your local mode isn't working. That's bizarre.
I was just running it, so I don't know. Could have been...
You were able to fly through anyway, so it doesn't really matter.
Well, next time we'll have this thing we run through because we'll probably have it more textured, actually textured, and we'll have the actual destruction in it for it, and it will look much cooler.
Did you try a different character?
I did. We'll try human one more time just to see.
Right. It looks like some connection thing. I don't know.
You should cut it right now, Jackson. No one
even gets
knows.
Wait, I'll say, hey, it worked, and then you can cut it.
Oh.
Jaco just said something about, can anybody else do dev mode?
Okay, so
No,
it's
so
just a
it's
general
not just
problem
you.
with this
So
build.
it's not just me.
Welcome to development, guys.
Yeah,
Everything's
exactly.
broken all the time.
I should not have updated right before we went on.
It's broken
Cool.
all the time.
Yep, everything's broken all the time. All right, well, thanks, guys, for coming out. As always, we love that you guys continue to be patient with us as we work our way through this project. The game is emerging. It's just, as always, in game development world, things take longer than you would like.
Yes, it does.
So, anything else, Mr. O'Neill? We covered all?
I think we're good.
All right.
Yeah.
Jack?
I'm good. I'm set.
All right. Thanks, guys. We will see you then. What's next? We got a write-up coming on Thursday?
Yes, sir.
All right.
That's
We'll
correct.
see you on the forums then on Thursday.
Awesome.
And we'll see you in 5.7, which I'm trying to get another snap test of
Which
that
is
out
Really looking
ASAP,
good.
right?
It's looking good though.
Cool. All right. See you in game.